Hey everybody, 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. Welcome to the AquaStax hour with me, Long Steve. Actually, it's a little bit before 3 o'clock. I thought I'd start early today, just because I'm here, and the weather's cleared up a bit in the UK now. It was a bit wet this morning. Us Brits would like to talk about the weather, so I thought I'd open with that. Right, let us, I will just check my monitor here, make sure they're streaming. Yep, we're definitely on. Hopefully you can hear me. Do say if you can't hear me at all. My new microphone is attached to my lapel, or I haven't got a lapel, I'm wearing a t-shirt, but it's attached to me quite closely, so it should be okay. Right, let's remember where we were at the end of last week. I will bring up my gulp task and start up Chrome. I think I already have it started here. So last week I managed to get some blocks actually drawing of different shapes. In fact, I think I remember all 7 or all 8 blocks we got working, and I got the rotation code in place so that they could rotate around. And I think so I'm pressing the down key to make it drop quickly, and I'm pressing left and right, obviously, to move it left and right, and up to rotate it. And there was quite a lot of interesting code to do that. It involved, let's go into our block class. So it involved the definition of all the blocks, which I actually call tiles. They're tiles when they're static, or the definitions of tiles, and the tiles become blocks when they're dynamic in the code. The block is what moves up and down the screen, and there are you have multiple blocks, one after another, coming down the screen. Blocks all fall into the grid. That's the thing I'm going to be looking at today. So the grid we kind of left off and haven't done much with yet. The grid class is pretty much just draws the red grid that you can see in the background there. And the block, we did a lot of code in block. I will need to refactor some of this because I wrote a lot of logic code for, what have we got? We've got draw triangle there. We've got all the tile data that defines the different blocks. Let's just see if we can draw a different one on the screen. So number 1, actually I think I'm viewing number 2 or 3. Yeah, that purple L-shaped block is tile number, and it's defined in the main game class here. Hey, Code for Life, welcome. I think I saw you last week, didn't I? How's it going? Here we are. Here's where the block is defined. So let's go back and try block 0 again, just to see if it looks any different. It should do. Ooh, actually, there was an error in my gulp task. Looks like live reload may not be working. I bet something is using the port number. Grab gulp. Task isn't running. Let's try that gulp task again. No, I've forgotten it. Gulp serve, isn't it? Gulp serve. Just trying it on the command line here, seeing if it works. You have to put the rating is a number. You have to put a exclamation mark rate, then a space, then a number between 0 and 100, and it'll give me a rating. I seem to remember somebody trying exclamation mark joke last week, but I haven't modified the bot to respond to that yet. I have been doing a bit of work on him on the side, but I haven't actually haven't completed that yet. So this is working okay. Let's try that back again in Slick Edit. Observe. There we go, no errors this time. Hi Dudley, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. I was just about to see if my live reload was working. It wasn't. Let's refresh the page. There we go. Yes, here's a different block. Block 0, and I can rotate it. Let's just try block 2. Switch back, and now live reload is working. Okay, that's good. So what I want to do today is focus on the grid a bit more. I was about to say I could refactor a whole lot of this code. So in the block class, I had draw triangle. We got all the tile data. I get a draw tile function. I had a rotate tile. So the rotations are all pre-calculated. So the data for each grid, for each block, at each of the 4 rotations is pre-calculated. Then I had to get tile anchor. This had a lot of confusion about anchors a couple of weeks ago based on drawing the tiles, but the anchors are to do with when they rotate, so that it doesn't look like the block is rotating within its own square. It's kind of moving around a point, or in this case it looks like it's moving around the sort of middle of those blocks. Anyway, so and then there's a rotate function, so quite a lot of this has to be refactored and made proper. What I've discovered over the last few weeks of doing this code streaming is that it's really beneficial to just sort of hack a load of stuff together, do something interesting for an hour and a half or so, remind myself of how old code works, and do stuff. And then after a couple of weeks of that, having thought about it for a bit, I can then go and refactor code and make it a bit more long-term, easier to maintain. Because at the moment I'm just hacking everything into the block class. So at some point I'll refactor this, but I'm not going to do it today. I'm going to focus a bit more on the grid. So I'm going to remind myself of how I did the grid in my old code, and then see what happens and implement some new stuff. I probably won't get into collision today. A large part of the grid code involves collision and how to collide the moving blocks with the grid. But there's also some stuff to do with the camera as well. The original game that I'm recoding has a moving camera, so the tower that you create as you pile blocks on top of one another gets bigger and bigger, but the camera shifts up to focus on the little guys that are walking around your tower. So there's a moving camera involved. Let me find my class. So the grid class, the grid data structure in the old game was just an array. I'm pretty sure it was called grid data, grid_data, and it's an array with 0, 0 being the bottom left cell there, and so it says one-dimensional array. So grid data 0 is that bottom left cell. Grid data 1, 2, 3, and upwards, up to the top. Hi. Versus. Oh, he's gone already. Some people pop by and then disappear straight away. They don't appear in my chat. Oh no, here he is. Versus Bass. Good to see you. Maybe the chat's a little bit delayed. My bot recognizes people coming in faster than the online chat window I use. It's called Profanity, which is pretty cool. Anyway, where was I? Grid index. So grid data, grid_data, which I'm sure is here somewhere. Grid_data. Nope, it's not. Oh, never mind. It's grid index was a function that gets used a lot, and it takes an x and a y coordinate. Now all these old variables in my old code have 8 on them, and that 8 means that the actual value is shifted up by 8 bits, so effectively multiplied by 255. Or 256. Yeah, I think it's 256. It's because we didn't have floating point maths, all of the maths for working out pixel positions and physics and everything else was all done using fixed point maths. And what I did was I multiplied everything by 256 or shifted everything up by 8, and then you can do fixed point mathematics and then shift the results back down again. So 1 pixel was in fact 255, or the number 255, and if you wanted to move something by half a pixel, you added 128 to the x8 or the y8 values of it. Param triangle unit size, I think that was the size of the triangle or size of the grid squares. In our latest code I've renamed that to blocks. Block size, I think it is. Yeah, block size. So the old code has lots of shifting up and down by 8, and it's quite cumbersome to remember how it all works, but hopefully I will. Anyway, this grid index, it basically uses game grid base height. Now, what was game grid base height? My guess is that's the coordinate or the y coordinate in the sort of entire game space of the bottom of the grid. So where the camera might move up, the bottom of that grid is going to move down. Game grid base height is probably, let's see how many times that's used. This is loaded and saved. So here's the initialize init game data. So game grid base height starts at 0. That's handy. It means we can ignore it to start with. And then it's used there. It's used to convert a row into a. So this is if you want to find a row in the grid. So say you want to find the actual game space location of a row in the grid, then it multiplies it up by 8, multiplies that by the block size, or triangle unit size as it used to be, and then adds on the game grid base height. Okay, yes. So does game grid base height? Yeah, game grid base height is probably going to go negative because as the camera moves up, it will shift down. Or maybe it's not affected by the camera. Let's keep searching for it, see what else it does. Block Y. So these functions are just the inverse of each other. Render the game grid from the bottom to top. Yeah, so this is a drawing routine. Here we are. Camera height is subtracted from game grid base height. First pass diagonal lines. Set camera height. So, hey, data profs. Good to see it. Hopefully everyone can see the little pop-ups occurring. I haven't actually checked my OBS window to make sure they're coming out on the stream. They should be. Let's see. Code for life. Are you getting my messages? What are you saying, Code for life? Are you typing messages into the window? I got that message. Yep. Not sure if they might be coming through on my other window. Yeah, there we go. I've got a browser window over here with the live coding TV on it. That might be, let's close that. That might be grabbing some messages from the chat. You never know. Anyway, so where were we? I was looking at, this is set camera height, and it uses this game grid base height. For an infinite level, the minimum camera height must be correctly set. So there were two types of levels in the old game. There were infinite levels, where you just kept building a grid higher and higher, and then there were the predefined levels, which were like puzzles, basically. Let's see if I can. What I'm trying to figure out is whether I need to care about game grid base height in my new calculation. Oh, here we go. So, yes. So in the infinite levels, every time the camera moved up, at some point, the data off the bottom of the grid was effectively removed from the data structure because it couldn't have an infinite amount of data. Okay, sorry, but I don't have an audio output. So you don't have any audio at all? Can anybody hear me speaking? Hope you don't mind typing in. So, is that okay? Just want to check that everyone can hear me. My mic is the little level meter is definitely popping up and down. But if Code for Life asks me a question, I can answer on the chat. Anyway. So it looks like, yes, so when we shift the game grid based on it moving, oh, it's your speakers, okay, that's good. But also it looks like I don't care about game grid base height at the moment, but camera height might be interesting. I'll ignore camera height for now. We'll do the grid stuff, and then we'll get to camera maybe at the end of the day. So where was I? I was going to create grid data, so it's dead simple. We just want grid data. Going to be that, and whereabouts in my old code is it going to, is it game grid or grid data? Game grid. Ah, there it is, it's game grid, right. I'll call it game grid in my new code. Then when it creates it, what does it set it to? So game grid, init game grid, here we are. So it's creating a number of rows. If it's an infinite level, it uses a value that says number of infinite rows, otherwise game grid normal rows. So I don't know what that is, but, oh, cheers. I don't know whether you mean setup as in my monitors here and my cameras and things, but it didn't take long to set up. Triple desktop, yeah, it's definitely really useful. The more screens you have as a coder, the better, if you ask me. I've had 3 for years. Also got 2 computers, and I'm sharing the mouse and keyboard between them using Synergy. If you ever have that set up, look up Synergy, it's definitely worth using. So my PC on the left here, and I've got a Mac with 2 screens on the right. Anyway, I was going to look at GameGrid, so let's just define GameGrid as param grid calls. Ooh, stupid window disappearing. There we go. Actually, let's just do this. We'll have it as an array for now, so new array. So I've been reading lots about ES6, ECMAScript 6, which is the new version of JavaScript. And I kind of want to use lots of ES6 features, but I'm not going to because I don't think that Cocos2d-JS supports a lot of it yet. So I'm going to use old school code. So new array, and we want blocks. No, we want grid columns. So what's that? That's grid width. So that's aq.config.gridwidth times by. So I used a parameter which specified the number of game grid rows normal. I wonder, do I want to care about what that is? I might just pick a number at the moment. Let's go with grid height. Do we have a grid height? Block size, grid width. Grid width. Don't have a grid height actually, do we? Grid height is worked out based on this value passed in. So actually we're passing in blocks wide and blocks high. So game grid is just going to be wide times high, but I think we might want like an extra screen's worth of height in there just for good measure at the moment. Okay, so that's game grid. And what else do I want to do? What I think I'm going to try and do is get some code that will show me within the grid where my block that's falling down the grid is. Height is not defined. It's high, isn't it? H-I-G-H. So what I want to be able to do is figure out that this block is covering a set of blocks in the background. I guess that's collision in some way, isn't it? But also what I could do is, hi, good read, good to see it. I kind of know JavaScript, I've been using it for a while. I don't know much ES6 yet, although I'm reading a book about it at the moment. But my usage of JavaScript and most programming languages tends to be quite limited. Since I've been doing this for so long, my old coding was all basically just arrays and primitive variables. I don't tend to use collections and all sorts of other stuff very much. Though I have written a lot of server code, so I'm fairly competent with the asynchronous programming that you get with Node.js. Anyway, what I want to do is I want to have some kind of button that I can press that will put that block in the grid at that place. So let's see what we can do. So I'll avoid collision detection at the moment, but I will just do that. Were you asking a question about an image? Discord, what does that mean? I don't know. I can't see that particular thing in my browser, unfortunately. I'll have a quick look. If I can jump onto Live Coding TV, where I can pop out the actual chat window. Hopefully in that I'll be able to see a URL I can click on. Now, there we go. What's that going to take me? That didn't seem to work. I have no idea what I'm looking at there. Could be anything. Ask Stack Overflow. That's always the best thing to do if you've got a question about anything. Anyway, so let's put a button I can press that will trigger the block to be inserted into the grid at a certain place. So let's do that. Let's do if. Do I want self.keys pressed? Could do. Self.keys pressed key code. Okay, so if self.keys pressed cc.key, I don't know, space. Is there a space? Yes, space. Then self. Now, what do I want to do? Do I want to tell the block to insert itself into the grid, or do I want to tell the grid to accept a block at a certain place? I think I want to tell the grid to accept a block at a certain place. So I'm going to do self.grid now. At some point in the past, I used, what was it called? Was it insert grid? I'm not specifically trying to maintain consistency with my old code, but if I use at least names that are familiar, then I'll be able to search on them a bit better. So let me find where my code was. Hi, Chan97. Let's get rid of that because that's overlapping the little animations that are coming up. Draw some water. I want the actual logic, don't I? Where's that gone? Render. Get scores. Render thumbnail. Render block. Outline block. Render grid square. Are we there yet? Nope. Tick, game tick. Here we are. Right, so I want to, what system am I using? I'm using SlickEdit to code in. I'm using Cocos2d-JS as the framework, and with that, one of the first videos I did, or first streams I did, was I set up live reload, and I use gulp, which is a little task runner which sits in the window down here and serves up the game JavaScript code in a little browser window to Chrome, and if I make changes it'll reload it. So it's all pretty straightforward. Ultimately I'll be able to publish the game as a web app or a web browser game, but I can also build iOS and Android and PC versions as well. That's a long time coming though. I'm fumbling around here trying to find out where my code was that put something in the grid. Lots of cutscene stuff, lots of all sorts of things going on. Handle rising water, handle ghost block. Full block. This is probably a bit more there where I want to be. So this will be falling the block down the screen, and it'll do numerous things like snapping it to the grid. Snap block to grid. There we go. Maniac 131013. Good to see it. Did Seeker07 appear and disappear a little bit of time ago as well? Yeah, he did. Or she, not sure. Anyway. Drop block. Probably going to be snap block to grid, maybe. Or there we go. Test for collision. Collision will collide with world bounds, collide with game grid, slide block, break block, bounce block, project out of grid. If it hasn't moved, it's stuck in place. Fix to grid. There we go. That's what we want to do. Let's see what fix to grid does. Right. Fix the falling block to the grid. So add the block to the game grid. Collide block. Okay. And then it does a lot of other stuff. So collide. This is what I wanted. Right. So this should take the block that's moving and basically insert its data into the game grid, or what did I call it? I call it grid. Yes, game grid. Right. So I'm gonna, for now, I'm gonna call it collide block, but that'll probably change. So collide block, self.block. Let's just do that. And we go into grid, and we're going to write the collide block function. Right. So what does collide block do? Gets a load of variables, sets the position in the grid. So the grid, so I don't know if you remember, if anyone's watched the previous streams, but the blocks are made up of these numbers, which are nibbles, which represent certain types of triangle. So these are the 4 types of triangle that we have, and that's type 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you have a grid cell on the screen, something like that one there, right at the bottom. Let's just move it to the bottom left. Bottom left. And that is 2 triangles. One triangle of type, let's see, it's of type 2, and another triangle of type 4. And they're drawn in the same place with a particular color. So what I want to do is put that 2 and the 4 into the grid. And then, hi, Dodo Durio. Cool icon, by the way. Lots of people have great avatars, icons. So let's draw. So what does the original code do? So it loops over the grid size, which I think is going to be the size of the tile. Yeah, so it's 2 by 2 or 1. Chico Evans back. Good to see you again. I'm just about to hopefully draw some of my blocks in the grid by using a collide block function, which I was looking at my old code. So we're going to need grid size for a start. Actually, that makes me think that I'm going to need to expose the tile data for the block type as part of a function on the block. So let's do that, shall we? Get tile data. And I might as well store this tile data. I wasn't going to refactor this yet. I do store tile data in there. Good. So tile data is in there, and we have block num, don't we? There we go. So we want to return this. Return self.tiledata self.num. So in here we want we need grid size. I might separate out have a window split between the two files in a minute if I get tired jumping back and forward between them. There we go. So we have grid size. Right. Actually, I probably don't. One of the good things about ES6 that I've been reading about is the decomposition of objects and things like that, which makes the declaring of local variables like this based off of members of objects that you may have received as part of the function or from somewhere else much easier and more succinct. But I'm still going to do it old school for a while. So we have grid size. And then we just have x and y looping over that, don't we? Good size. So we've got var x and y. And what do we do? So block position, grid position. So this is going to be the position of this is the index into grid data of the first position of the block that we're dropping. So there we go, grid pos. So grid pos is top left. So that's okay. So this is grid index of block plus grid size minus 1 times. Okay, so for some reason the loop loops from top left whereas our tile data is specified from bottom left, I believe. If I go, what am I doing? I want to go back to the thing. So if I put that there, the tile data looks like bottom left, bottom right, top left, top right. But the loop over X and Y is going to go through the grid positions of top left and then that direction, so top left first. So we're working out the top left. So let's do that. Top left, and I use a function called grid index. Let's jump to where that is. Okay, so grid index. Oh, we're back to game grid base height again. But I can be assured that's 0, and that's a pixel position, and this is the block data stored as an array, and we use the X and Y position. Okay, so that X and Y position of a block is actual pixel position on the screen, and that's going to actually be the X and Y position of the node within the space of the grid. So I can do, and this is working out, it's getting a grid index. Okay, so I might as well write myself a get grid index function for now. Let's just do it in here. And it's going to be the pixel position. So it's going to be node.x. So far, x. Do we do x and y? Yeah. X is actually going to be exactly as it node.x directly, because the grid takes up the whole of the panel that we're using. So the the block position is going to be definitely from 0 through to the size, but the y, so that's literally just divide it by block size. Okay, I'm trying to figure out all the old shiftings and stuff. So all we need to do is take node.y, divide that by block size, which we have up here. And is it going to be math.floor? No, it's going to be y and x. Actually, x is going to be the same, isn't it? And then index is going to equal to y times grid size, or grid width, isn't it? Blocks wide. Blocks wide, yeah, blocks wide. Y times blocks wide plus x. Don't do that. Okay. I don't need to put brackets in, but I always like to make it clear. Okay. Hi, 80. Good to see you. Now let's see. I guess I should test this bit of code and see if it's actually going to do something that works. Why don't I just print out grid index as I move the block around the screen, and we'll see what happens. One thing I should do actually is figure out a way to put something on the screen and have it as like a debug, something debug like we've got down the bottom there. That's drawn by Cocos2d-JS, but I'd quite like something on the screen rather than just using console logs all the time. I might figure that out if I get time to think. So let's just see what this does. Aq.grid is not a constructor. Oh, typo. There we go. So if I hit space, okay, so blocks wide is not defined. It's self.blockswide, isn't it? And I also want, every week I make the same mistakes at the beginning of each stream because I'm only working on this code once a week. I forget all the little nuances, but we get there, half an hour in. So 269. Okay, so if I move that right to the bottom, I'm hoping it's going to be 0. It is 0, excellent. If I move it there, it should be 1. Okay, so what we're getting now is the grid index, or the index into the grid data array of the bottom left-hand corner of the block that we're moving around the screen. So if I move it all the way to there, that's 13, so 0 to 13. Excuse the plane going over. I live quite close to an airport. So I can move it off. Actually, I'll need to do some collision testing against the edges of the grid and stuff a bit later on. But I can't move it up. If I refresh that, hopefully, how long have you been developing this game? Says Code for Life. How long have I been streaming for? As long as I've been streaming, which is basically about 6 to 8 weeks, I think, less than that, 1 hour a week, so about 12 hours. Although the game isn't a new one for me. I wrote it about in 2005, so it's probably about 11 years ago I wrote the game. But it's a remake of a game I made 11 years ago. Anyway, what was I going to do? I was going to just make sure that if I move that block down to just one above it, so that's 28, that's 14, and that's 0. Yes, so that's good. Right. So I'm pretty sure that that's working. My get grid index. And now we want to work out the top left for some reason. Can I go back? Yes, look at it. It keeps a stack of where you've been. No, it doesn't. There it is. That's the backwards thing. So it's not. Oh, I'm going all over the place now. I want to. It was collide block, wasn't it? There we go. Collide block. That's what I want. So top left, grid index plus grid size -1 times grid columns. Yes, grid columns being the grid wide. So top left, grid index. Let's maintain my old naming convention. Grid index, block. Offsets we can ignore because they're all based on arrays. We've got grid size -1 times AQ block size. It's self.blockswide. Right. So that will give us the amusing. Thank you. So that will give us the top left position, and then this X and Y will loop over our block. Although it's slightly annoying. My old self wasn't particularly great at naming things, so I've used grid size when I should probably have used block size there, or even tile size. That would have been a better name for it. Right. Thanks for streaming. You say we learn a lot from you guys, but whether you'll learn a lot of good code or not, I don't know. This is pretty old code. Hopefully I'll be able to make it a lot better. Which is kind of, like I said earlier, one of the things I like doing about this is I can hack together a load of stuff in an hour and a half and then think about it for a week. And then next week I'll refactor it all into, I'll rename things, I'll make them a bit nicer. I've already done that once or twice, in fact, with some stuff. And it's just, once you understand how it works, you can then figure out how best to do what you're doing. But you can usually only do that when you have the luxury of a personal project or something that's not commercial. When you've got deadlines and other people paying you to do stuff, then you have to get it right first time. Anyway, where was I? Oh, thanks for the follow, Sergeant. Much appreciated. Hopefully, the little fireworks will appear in a minute. Wait about 15 seconds or so. My bot Tim will figure out that you're a follower. I shouldn't get distracted by it. So, yay, there it is. Let's follow and some fireworks. Right. So we're working out grid position and block position, and then grid block position. Fantastic. So grid pos is going to be top left, and also that's not going to be int, that's going to be var. Let's just space these things out a bit. So grid pos top left, params grid columns is now self.blocks wide. And grid size is AquaConfig block size, I think. Oh no, grid size is what I worked out earlier, so that's fine. And then this, so what's this tile data block pos? So what is block pos? That comes out of tile data? Oh. No, I don't have that in there. So what's block pos going to be? This is something that I obviously put in my old code, but I don't know what it is now. So tile data is part of the tile data. Grid block. Oh, it's working out block pos. So this is the position within. I know what it is. This is actually grid block pos. This is the grid data or the tile data for the position in the block. So it's one of these entries here, and it's grid data. We're actually working out into, so that's going to be tile data dot grid data, and for some reason they're two-dimensional arrays. Why is that? Because it's rotations. So the rotation of the that's interesting. Did I work out rotations up here? Block rotation. Yeah, we work out block rotation. Yeah, tile grid offset. Okay, so we need to know the rotation, which I think is inside block. So let's see if block rot. Yep. So we actually have to do grid data. So down here we want grid. So we want grid data, and then we want block dot rot, and then we want block pos x and y block pos. There we go. Right. So that should give us the actual nibbles, the 3 and the 1, or the 1 and 2 and the 4, or whatever the triangle data is for the tile, the block that we're dropping down the screen at the position that we're indexing into. Right. Okay. So then we bail out if grid pos is less than 0. I guess that means it can go under the screen or something like that. I'll put that in. Actually, if it's off screen, yes, because you could drop a block off screen. Silly doing, might as well do that there, shouldn't I? Right. Then we look at this value. If it's not equal to 0, so 0 means there's no actual block, no triangles in that position. So we then test the various nibbles to see if they're not 0, and if they are, then we actually OR the values of the game grid with those, what's in it. So we're basically adding the nibble in. So that's the lower nibble, so 0f, and that's the higher nibble, f0. but we're also, if it's collapsing, then we stick something else in as well. Okay, so that puts in, that adds something in there. So obviously the data in the grid, in each grid cell or each entry of game grid, stored a lot of information. Looks like the top bits were set on if it's collapsing. Looks like otherwise the tile index shifted up by 24. Tile index being, there are num, I think it is, isn't it? Okay, I'll not worry too much about that because the grid collapsing is going to take a long time to get going, but all I want to do now is just put in, so let's borrow these if statements. I'll do that much first. So that I don't need. So if it's not equal to 0 and the lower nibble is not equal to 0, and if the game grid, so we're checking the game grid, so if there's nothing in there already, we then insert that value into the lower nibble of the game grid, and then we also, if it's collapsing, we do that. Let's assume it's not collapsing, so I'm going to put tile index shifted up by 24 bits, so the top 8 bits of the integer are going to contain the tile index, which in this case is actually node or block.num, I think, isn't it? I've used that somewhere. Where did I use that? Did I use that for the rotation? Block.rot, there it is. That's block.rot. I want block.num. Num. Shifted up by 24. We don't need that. And then the next one is going to be almost the same. But it's going to store the high nibble. Okay. Then the next bit does it again for the, so what would we be doing here? That's the first bit, so that's the one triangle. I see, it's ORing the values together. Yeah, it has to merge them. I guess it'll just work, we hope. Hello, not a physicist, good to see you. So hopefully the most of this will work. I just have to change that. So we're putting stuff, it's going to, I need to use self.gamegrid, don't I? Because actually I could make it a bit easier by doing this. So, well, the last bit, deactivate the block once it's in the grid. Yes, so once a block has been stuck in the grid, it disappears and the next one comes down on the top of the screen. So we might get as far as that. That's, we'll do that in a minute if we need to. So, hopefully that will just put some data in the grid. Now we won't be able to see it yet. We need to actually render that data in the grid. Somehow. Right. Welcome, Steffi. Rendering data in the grid. Right, I hadn't thought about this yet. This is going to be interesting. Let's just see if it's not crashing or going wrong. So, grid pos is not defined. Okay, grid pos. There it is. Int. Yep, should be that. Lots of ints. I'm copying and pasting old Java code, so it's all going to be horribly broken. And this isn't going to do anything either, is it? No, we're okay. That's good. Save that. Let's see what I'm missing. Console is not defined. That's okay. Lots of. It doesn't like that. Yeah, I should use exclamation mark double equals, but I'm going to leave that like it is for now. See, so it's not crashing, still working, which is a good sign. I stick it down the bottom left. still working. Right. Now, what I want to do is let's have a look inside grid and see if we can't see what data is going in there. Let's go to sources. Let's just put a breakpoint here. Reload. So grid size is 2, that's what I was expecting. So grid pos, the top left, that's 14, yep. Then we've got block pos, okay, 0. I guess that's right. Block grid pos, that's going to be one of our numbers, 36. That's interesting. So tile data, grid data, block.rot. What's block.rot? 3. It's going to be that one. So yeah, we've got 36s in our tile data. And then down in here, if it's not all 0, we're basically just putting in, so grid pos is 14, game grid pos, yeah, we're ORing numbers in all over the place using the logical OR operator. And then we've got the next one coming in. So game grid pos is getting it, so the data is going into it. Let's see if we can render it now and figure out if it's what we want to see. Let's lose that. So how do I draw stuff in the grid? So I'm drawing a block. I suppose I want to factor out some of this draw triangle code maybe. And I can, I thought I'd fixed my bot so it only welcomes you a certain number of times if you come and go. Whether I've actually updated that code yet, I don't know. If you keep coming and going, it should stop giving you fireworks and greeting you. Maybe it's 3 or 4 times though, to stop the spamming. Let's see. So draw triangle gives me, it actually takes a draw node, doesn't it? And it renders that triangle based on the draw node geometry. And then a draw tile creates multiple, or uses a draw node, calls draw triangle several times. So that's how I draw the nodes of a particular block. Rotation. I kind of just want this bit of code here, and I want to draw this. I want to go over the tile, so I go over the grid, and any grid cell that has non-zero in the value, I want to use this code to create a draw node and then add it to the grid. That way we can see it on the screen. Let's hoist this function out and reuse it inside the grid class. So I'm going to put it up the top for now. Doesn't matter where constructor goes. So we want to draw try function. Actually, let's borrow this. And then here we go. Didn't get the formatting correctly. So block size put that back in there as well. We should be able to get rid of that there. Triangle, okay. And then we should just be able to do self.drawTry down here. See if that works. Yes, so it's still drawing. Right. Now I can use that draw triangle function. So I'm going to need to create a draw node. Borrow this bit of code first. So in the grid, when we collide a block, I guess I'll just do it arbitrarily for now. We want to what I might do is just create a render I suppose, render grid method for now. It's going to be a bit inefficient, you'll see why in a minute, but when we get there, it should just at least allow us to see something on the screen. So, rendering the grid, I'm going to have to loop over all the grid positions. We do that up here actually, don't we? Can borrow this bit of code. I'm going to call this, I'm going to change my mind, draw grid blocks, because we've already got draw grid. Self. Right, we've had almost an hour already. Going to have to round up soon, but I would definitely want to get something in the grid. So self dot equals this. Block size, we're using block size again. End up with that all over the place. Right, so this is going to be draw segment. Actually, I want to nest these loops, don't I? I don't need draw segment. So X is going along and Y is going up, and also we probably want Y is less than, no, that's okay. X and Y are going to be the positions, so we just want to create a draw node at that position. Can we do draw node? Node, draw node, node.x. Now, I can't remember if nodes are anchored to center. Oh no, draw nodes are not anchored. They're okay, they're bottom left. Positions are absolute. We want to do self.addChild node. It doesn't matter about the Z order. And for this particular node, we want to draw it using the so we used block, didn't we? Do I want to create a block? No, I don't necessarily want to create a block. I just want to create draw triangle. Block, extend. Now I'm trying to think how to create a static method on the block, because I actually want to call this method on block, but at this point in the code I haven't got a block object to use. Tell you what, I'll cheat for now, and I'm just going to hoist this draw triangle out and put it into block. This will come next week when I figure out how best to utilize these functions and where to put them. That way I can refactor them into the right place. So this is terrible. I mean, don't ever do this. I'm cringing internally now when I see myself copying and pasting this code. But I just want to get something on the screen before the end of the stream. What I need to do is self.draw try, and we pass in node. It's always going to be 0, 0 type. Now this is a good one. So this is where the we're going to do some testing. So if self dot it's going to be game. Come back. Not game grid. It's grid data. So it's going to be something a bit like this, isn't it? Self.gridData, and we need the position. So I can cheat here, I can just use P, and we'll just increment P every time through the loop. So P will be an index into the grid data, and that's the position we're drawing. And we want, if it does not equal 0, for a start, then we like down here we check the lower and the upper nibbles. So let's just do var d, put that there, self.gridData p, temporary variables all over the shop. If the lower nibble is not 0, then we draw the triangle corresponding to the lower nibble. So that's going to be D and 0F. Draw triangle was definitely size, had a color as well, didn't it? Do I need to put the color in there? Yeah, I do need to put the color in, which we should be able to get. I remember now, at some point I seem to remember the color, so the tile data down here, where we put the block number into the grid data, that refers to the tile which actually has color in it. It's defined here somewhere, there it is. So we can, when drawing the grid, we can pull out the color that that particular block or grid cell should be. For now I'm just going to cheat and use some color I haven't used before. Let's go into game, see if we have a nice color. Oh, I suppose I could cc.color.something. Let's see if there's a cc.color. Red. I'm guessing. No, no match found. cc.color. cc types. Just checking to see whether red is in there. Where's white defined then? Maybe it isn't. Oh. A couple of new folks arriving now. It's 4 o'clock. Let's just go for red. Red. Right, so that draws that one. And then we want a similar one for the upper nibble. F0 is not equal 0. But this one is shifted down by 4 bits. And we'll put that in the same color. So that creates the node, sets the triangle geometry, and then adds it if it's not null, if it's not 0. So, is that going to work? I'm going to need to do something first, aren't I? I'm going to need to figure out my brackets. Are they all gone? That one. That one. and that one. That's handy. So I don't need that one. So that one's not aligned in the same way. Maybe copying and pasting. Maybe I used to like 4 spaces and now I like 3. I don't know. Never mind. So that'll draw grid blocks. I suppose I could just stick a call to that down in here and we'll see what happens. It's going to just add a load of red blocks to the grid, which will get rendered in the Cocos2d-JS render call. But go down to the bottom of this. Oh, which is the match. I thought Slick Edit had a jump to the opening or jump to the closing bracket. Right, anyway. Now, okay, the winge. So, let's see what happens. Let's put that there, hit space, and ooh, yeah, it's crashed. It's probably jumped into an infinite loop. Just what I want to see. So, oh no, can't we probably 0 of undefined? Oh, okay, I've obviously, in my haste to write code, I broke something. P self.grid data. P game grid. It's not grid data, it's game grid. Ooh. So it did something. It definitely put some things in the grid. It's still going. If I do that. Ah, right, okay, so things are going in the grid. That's a good sign. If I rotate, ooh, looks like there might be an X and a Y in the wrong place somewhere. So let's see, what do we do? P, let's just make sure that P is the right position. And is 0, 0. X and Y are definitely using block size, which is, I think, the pixel, yeah, 50. So that's definitely going around pixel positions. The blocks look like they're getting drawn somewhere anyway. It's self.addChild node, node.x and y. That 0, 0 is definitely, yeah, that's relative to the block, so that's what's going to be there. Let's just try a block with single triangles in, so that I can check whether or not it's drawing individual triangles in the right way. So this one here, let's do that, put it down there, hit space. Yes, so it actually looks like it's drawing it, but it's not putting it in the right place for a start, and it looks like it's drawing it the wrong orientation, so that's a good. Let's see. So is that the collide with block function, or is it the where it's putting it? I think when I was testing the values, it looked like they were putting it in the right place, but maybe something else is not calculating that place correctly again here. So self.blocks high, self.blocks wide, so that's X, and then Y. It's incrementing up. X and Y. Did it draw one in the bottom left? It should draw one right in the bottom left-hand corner. Let's break and check what it's doing. So here, right and bottom left, space. So x and y are 0 and 0 at this point. And game grid, self.gamegrid p. And the d value is 49. Now 49, that's definitely a rotated triangle instance, but it's not quite what, oh, and yeah, 49 is probably going to be there. I was extolling the virtues of synergy earlier on, and occasionally the mouse buttons get a bit stuck, and I can be a bit heavy-handed with my left hand as well sometimes. So what happens is Silicated thinks I'm dragging a window around like this, even though I've just clicked. Still, you get used to it. There's probably some setting I can tweak to desensitize it a bit. Right, where was I? I was going to figure out what those values were. I'm looking at something like, I want to see it in hex. I wonder if there's a way of looking at a value in the Chrome tools in hex instead. Welcome Denart. Cool icon. So 49, what's 49 in hex? I should know that. I'm just a bit out of practice at instantly recognizing the difference between decimal and hex numbers. So 49 is 31. Yeah, of course it is. I'm going to know that by the time I've done this project. 31 being triangles 3 and 1 like it is there, so it's going to be a block square. So it's definitely got 31 in the right place. We're doing self.draw triangle node, so it's putting, it'll be going in and drawing a 3 and a 1, and then adding that to the node, and then it's going to come around again. That's interesting actually. It's doing a bunch of nodes. Oh no, they get garbage collected, so they won't matter too much. I should put that node inside the this bit here. So that's okay. That's working for the one bit. If I move that around, can I move it around? Yes. Ooh. It's drawing it, incrementing up the screen. So what is going on there? Maybe if I just it might have got itself stuck with the space bar or something. Right there, hit space, so it draws the one block there. I bet that's 13 cells up, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, it's 14, but is there 14 wide? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, there's 14 cells wide. So it's definitely offset that other point in somewhere. How is that happening? It's probably down here, isn't it? Could it be that top left function? Pretty sure it's not that. They're all based off of indexes. So it's here where it works out grid pods. That's block pods. Grid pods is up here. So it's this top left. I bet it's this top left that is that's got something a bit wrong. So grid size, I'll break into there and have a look in the debugger. So with my my tea out of the way. I'm going to spill that tea all over my keyboard in a minute. Right. So grid size is 2. So X and Y. So we've worked out the grid index. We've worked out top left is, interestingly, top left is 14. Yeah, so top left is 14. So that position there is 0 through to 13, and 14 is the first row, first column of the second row up. Right. Oh, hey, Dark Prophet. How's it going? So, top left is definitely 14, so that's fine. This is going to be, X and Y is going to be 0. So grid pos is top left minus Y being 0 times self.blocks wide plus X. So grid pos is still 14 in this instance. That's interesting. So then block pos is 0. And then we've got, I'm not quite convinced these are pulling the data out in the right way yet, but that should just mean that the blocks are rotated incorrectly, not that they're skewed up all over the different places in the grid. So we work out grid pos. So we're definitely just putting something in grid pos 14 at this point. Now we come back round again, and now we have grid pos of 15. So that's going to be that one there. It should end up being 0 and not, yeah, so it didn't come into any of those sub loops. Now we've got Y. Right, so now it's grid pos. Now we're at 0, so we're going top left, top right, bottom left, which is now 0 position in the grid, which is fine. And that should give us a 49, which is 31, so that's going to give us, oh, let's code now. Again. I'm just trying to debug why my grid data's being placed all over the place. And last grid position should be 1. Yes, it is. So that's going to be empty. So this one is 0. So that's okay. So we're coming back in here. So is collide block being called multiple times? And why did that get drawn up there? So the grid data is correct, but it looks like the drawing of it is in the wrong place. And also, this is getting called multiple times, which I'm confused by. So as I move it, yeah, more things occur. Right, let's just go back into here. I know why it is. I remember now. So my keys press functions, I need to clear keys whenever the key space, or I could just do self.keyspace key space is false. Now I remember. Right, so that will stop it getting called multiple times. And now why is it being drawn in the wrong place? So it must be up here. It must be working out the X and Y is wrong. Y is definitely increasing. Oh, I see what it's doing, I think. Stupid me. I want to draw every X and then increment Y. Right, let's give that a go, see what happens. So we put that there. Close. Maybe there's, am I doing less than? What I should do is if I work out, if I could loop over all of the array index positions and work out an X and Y for each position, I could do that. I'm trying to ignore that and just go for X and Y and increment the P for the grid position. It should work, but I think it probably needs to be that instead. Let's try that. Hello? There we go. Yes. So now it's actually putting something in the grid where it lands. If I actually do that again, I can probably hit space, which is effectively calling collide block wherever it is, and the position where it is in the grid, the block gets left there. Now, so what we've got is grid data, or what do I call it, game grid. Game grid containing the block data left behind as that falls down. Oh yeah, move it off the edge, and of course it wraps around. Again, that's more collision testing that has to be done. If I change the block shape, hopefully it will leave different shapes in the grid. They'll still be red. I haven't yet got the color in there, but we can try. Let's go to block shape number 2. Good old L. There it is, yep. So, let's putting them in. What would be nice actually is if what I wanted to do is highlight the different area of the grid as the block falls over it. That's possibly an option. Yeah, we could almost play Tetris now. Of course, will it overwrite? Yes, it does. And that's going to have on some, yay. So we're almost playing Tetris. I could do that next week, or I might go for the refactoring next week, because what I'm hitting now is I'm hitting the limit of the data being in certain places. What I want to do is now get the color from the tile. Hi Wolfgang, good to see you this afternoon. Almost finishing now, actually. I've had an hour and 20 minutes. It's usually about the time I run out of steam and a tea. But at least I've actually progressed a little bit forward. Also rendering these blocks every time. I should probably just do that in there. I bet there's a whole load of nodes getting created that shouldn't be. So for a start, that's something one thing to do. Also, I'll need to think a bit about how I want to render that grid, because I don't like all these draw nodes. But maybe I'll leave them for now, and then at some point in the future I'll figure out a better way of rendering the grid. A bit more efficient. Let's just see if I can't pull out the color value. We've got a collide block. We have the tile data, and we've got block num. So why don't we just do, let's get the tile data from a block. The thing is, we've lost blocks. Now I'm just rendering triangles in the grid. I've lost any reference to a block that it might have been. Tile data actually needs to be separate from, so tile data is used by both block and grid. So I'll need to make sure tile data is separated so they can both access it. Can I cheat at the moment? Yeah, there's a limit to how much you can cheat and ruin the code, so it's almost impossible to refactor. But if let's see, I could put tile data somewhere else. No profanity filters on usernames on live coding TV. Do I want to carry on? I kind of like to. Just need to think. Anyone got any ideas where I should put the grid, the tile data? I can probably put it inside block. I wonder if I can make it. I could just put it up here, couldn't I? Let's take that out. Well, let's make it public, but within a namespace. So let's do AQ dot tile. I'll call it tile data, uppercase. So logged in with GitHub, no profanity filter there either. No, it's not particularly profane. These days, anything goes, doesn't it? So what am I doing? I want tile data. Let's go back down here and set tile data equals aq.tiledata. No ratings today yet. Has anybody rated me? I think somebody tried to earlier. Nearing the end of the day, give myself some fireworks. I'm going to rate myself at a 75. There we go. Anybody else wants to add a rating to that? More than welcome to. The ratings get stored, but they're not used for anything. I need some more incentives. I need to increase the functionality of my bot so it can do some things to incentivize people to rate and come back next week. Anyway, so we've got tile data. Now it's public. I should be able to borrow. Let's just double check that still works. Is it broken? Yes. Pre-rotate tile. Where was that in block? Self.tiledata. Let's use self.tiledata there. Block line 204. There it is. Oops. Nope. 137. There we go. Now we're back working again. So I can now use tile data in here because we inserted the block number or the tile number and shifted it up by 24 bits, so it's in the game grid. So when we draw this, we want to get the color. So let's draw. So tile is going to equal aq.tiledata, and it's going to be equal to D, which is our actual game grid value. It's D shifted down by 24 bits. Welcome return network. 45 bits now, 24 bits. And just for good measure, we'll make sure that doesn't overflow. Like that. aq.tiledata, and then this is going to be tile.color. Now, those colors are. Yes, we do that. So we can just do cc.color, tile.color. Do that. Is that going to be the same? Interestingly, block num shifted up by 24. I'll worry about that another day. Looks like the tile data is the same for a block when it doesn't necessarily. It's possible that obviously in the game, two different blocks could be falling down the screen, and they can both be put into the same grid square. So they should actually be different colors. Now let's try that. With any luck, yes, now we've got the same color that's pulled out from the block. Right. Oh, 5 minutes. I want to get multiple blocks on the screen. I'm on a roll now. Let's just jump into game, and let's just change that to a different color so I know it's working. That's green. Yep. Every time I hit space, it's calling collide block, which is leaving the block, I suppose, like a ghost or an image in the grid data. Right, so that's working fine. Now, one more thing I want to do. When collide block is called, we want to remove the current block from dropping and add a new one. So when we add a new block, so basically we just create a new one up here, don't we? New block, position it to the top middle of the screen, and then down it goes. So if I do, let's move block by, let's do a new block function. We'll do that. And let's have a random number. Random number between 0 and 1. So we want math.floor times aq.tiledata.length, however many tiles we have. So let's do that. The number. Then self.block, self.gamePanel.addChild. And we kind of want to disappear the original block, don't we? So before that happens, we want self.block I wonder if hide is a method. Let's just see if I can do a search for hide. cc.hide. Don't know. Well, let's not worry about it just yet. Let's just cc. I know what we can do. We can do game panel. Now there's an add child. There's got to be some way of removing children as well. This is where I need to dive into the Cocos2d-JS documentation. I haven't actually had a look at that today. Yeah. And my internet connection doesn't work. Oh no, we're in. API. It'd be really nice if there was a way of just like jumping straight to this help from within SlickEdit. There might be a way. I mean, it kind of does help, but it doesn't jump into classes very much. So cc node. So we want add child. There must be a node remove from parent maybe, or a remove all children, remove child. That's simple. Remove child. The cleanup parameter is not passed. It will force a cleanup. Okay, that's probably what I do want. So I just want to do game panel dot remove child self dot block. So that removes the current block and adds a new one randomly. So there's our first one. So if I hit spacebar, doesn't remove it? No, it doesn't. Of course, I have to call new block. So we do that in here. Collide block, self.new block. So that worked. Almost. Did it crash? Game panel is not defined. Of course, it's going to be self.gamePanel, isn't it? There we go. So we don't actually keep a record. We do keep a reference to game panel there, but we'll create a new one down there. So what I actually want to do is just remember that self.gamePanel equals game panel, and then game panel down here, self.gamePanel, self.gamePanel. Right. Ooh. I have to keep clicking on the window to activate it. Oh, no, not quite. Remove child of undefined. Okay. Self.gamePanel. Oh, of course, and I'm not doing self equals this. Why has SlickEdit decided it wants to give me 4 spaces after an open bracket? I swear I told it I like 3. I've always liked 3. Like ever since I've been programming, I've liked 3 spaces. All of a sudden, SlickEdit decides it wants to give me 4. I shall have to look at the settings for that. Right. one in the bottom left. Still didn't work. W is not defined. Of course, it's the I copy and pasting code in my haste to get things working and show you guys something, and of course it all goes horribly wrong. So W is just blocks wide. It's basically the size of the game panel, isn't it? I can probably pull the game panel size out of game panel, but for now I will just do this. So we want block size times by blocks wide divided by 2. And H is going to be block size cc.win size.height. Yay, it worked. And the second block has come down. So what I can do is I can slot that on top. And hopefully it will remain... Oh, of course there's no actual block collision yet. If I stick it there, there we go. Yeah. I can get the timing right. Fit that one somewhere. There. Let's see if I can fit it just on the top. Gonna hit the button now. Oh, it filled in. But it did something interesting there. And that's anyway, it's close. I've got something going on. I've basically got some data appearing in the grid, which is better than it was to start with. No collision yet. Well, that worked quite well. It seems to be giving me all the blocks that I was expecting. There's one. So, in theory, in the original game, if I put a block here like that, it should slide off. And you can see the bug I thought about earlier, where the block color of the one coming down overwrites the colors of any triangles that are already in the cell where it lands. That didn't used to happen, of course. I shall figure that out later on. And of course, there's no collision, so it will override. So next week, what I think I'll do is, now I've got a bit more of the code talking, I've got the block and the grid, and I'll think a bit about how those particular classes need to work in the wider context of the game, and the data that they need to share between them. And I'll probably do a bunch of refactoring off stream. I don't want to do too much of that on the stream. I might just like go over it at the beginning of next time to show you what I've done, because it's pretty boring just watching me shuffle code around the place. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the camera involved, because I think there's two things to do next. There's collision, and then there's the camera. And I want to get the camera first, because a lot of the code that works out the positions of blocks within the grid when they're moving around and they're falling will be reliant on the camera position. Because if the tower is built up and the camera, I think there are various options the camera has, and one of them is fall at the top of the tower, so the camera will move up, and there's a background graphic that has some parallax scrolling on it, so that will shift at a different rate. But if I get the camera moving up and down the grid, then I can get the collision code written, which will all be based off of the camera position, because obviously if the camera moves, the position on the screen in relation to the block and the grid will all be different. So they won't be able to use absolute coordinates. There'll have to be lots of minus camera height and things like that figured out inside the code. In fact, there's plenty of that in the Java code earlier. I was looking somewhere, collide block. I think this is where collide block is called. We're beyond the camera point, but definitely somewhere around here there's cameras involved. Anyway, I can't remember that. Can't remember where that is now. Right, I think that's good for today. Thanks very much for watching today. Hope you've had a good afternoon. It's got dark now, but that's quite a good view to finish the stream on. I think last week's was one block on the screen, and now I've almost got a tower of blocks on the screen. the sort of last scene of the stream is quite a good indication of how far I've got each week. There's definitely more things happening. It's not perfect yet, obviously, and I'm still doing collision manually. But next week, like I said, camera positioning, and then maybe a bit of collision detection after that. After that, we'll actually have almost the beginnings of a game, which will be awesome. So, thank you very much. Really appreciate you watching. Anyone like to give me a rating or a follow, please do. You'll get notified by Live Coding TV when I'm online again next. It'll be this time next week at 3 o'clock. Next stream next week, 3 p.m. UK time. UK time. Since I've got my stack of blocks, I'm going to give myself an extra rating now. I'm going to rate myself a bit higher. How many lines of code have we got as well? Just out of interest, I should have done that at the beginning of the project, or the beginning of the stream, and then seen how they were at the end. 1,050 lines of code. Wow. Oh, thanks for the follow as well, Cocos2d, much appreciated. I forget whether I've counted the lines of code in my old game. I think it was somewhere along the region of 20,000. So quite a lot. Hopefully I won't need that many this time, because the old code that we used to write was pretty verbose, and there was no framework underneath it as well. But I think that's a good point to end today. So thank you very much all, and I shall see you again next week. Let's see if I can switch my scene back to the splash screen. I can. Okay. Cheerio all. I shall hang around on the chat for a little bit and see you again soon.